The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Okay, here I am. I'm Jerry Street Magic, and I'm down here at one of my favorite places called Wellsprings. And here at Wellsprings, they have different programs. Today we're really blessed with having a really great program. This program is Black History Month, and you're going to hear about some people that actually really didn't make it real famous, but they really contributed an awful lot to the community. So. And I need to do a little magic trick here for you. And here's something. Here's a ring. I'm going to put my ring on this rope. Here. Okay. See, it's on that rope, and I'm going to put that rope just like that. Okay, on my hand there. Okay. And now I'm going to close my hand up. See the ring's there. Now I'm going to take this rope and tie it around my hand here, like so. Okay, now the magic words, abracadabra, unloosen it, and open up my hand again. See these long ropes here? It's gone. You know where it went? It went actually in my pocket. It was in my pocket. Okay, good. Okay, so we're really in for a treat. Gail Mann is the director here, and we can call Gail Mann, and I'll give you a phone number if you're interested in the program, and you'd like to actually sign up and maybe come here. Her number is 260-422-6618, and then when you do that, there'll be buttons to push. If she's not here, just push number 2 for adult directors, okay? Because I have a lot of fun down here at Wellsprings, and I think you would too, anyone over 60. Okay, we're getting ready to start the program.
An event honoring Black History Month. And I think I've probably mentioned several times, when we took that 2 weeks off that we did in January, we didn't go out bar hopping like you might have thought, didn't fly to the Virgin Islands. We spent, I know, we should have. We spent a lot of time here planning programs ahead that we thought would be meaningful. And Kelly's rather new here, and I had mentioned last year that we did women's history presentations for Women's History Month, and she said, why not do some presentations for Black History Month? And I thought it was a great idea. So between the three of us, it's been a work in progress. I've probably given Roy fits because I deviated from 2 of the history people that I told him we were doing, and here he was trying to put a board together today. All of a sudden he said, what happened to so-and-so and so-and-so? He said, oh, they're out the door. I've substituted 2 people for them. So, but Kelly was very instrumental in giving us names of people that she had read about. Roy did the historical background, and then I wrote the actual first-person biographies. So it's been a labor of love. So without further ado, what I will do is introduce each person by their Wellspring name, and then I'll let you tell them who they are today. And each of you will need to use the microphone. And this is Ann Spann. Yes.
I'm Ann, and I dress the part today because my character is Ella Baker. And Ella Baker was born about 12 years after my grandmother and about 12 years before my mother. And I know that during that time, ladies dressed. So I didn't wear my slacks today. And I also know that she lived during the time of the 20s, and they wore the hats and the flappers. And so these hats are in style again, and I love them. So when I go to church with my short hair on a cold day, I wear a hat. And so that's why I have my hat.
It's lovely, Ann.
Thank you. I also know that they wore a lot of boots and flat heels, not necessarily the high heels. So I do have on boots today. Just information about Ella. She was born in 1903, and she lived until she was 83 years old. Born in Norfolk, Virginia, the second of 3 children to educated parents. And that's another reason I dressed, because I thought, having grown up with comfort, she would have, and also because the ladies, number one, did not wear slacks during that time, and I didn't wear my gloves because I had my long sleeves, but normally if they were out, they would have worn the gloves. My grandmother never went anywhere important without her gloves. Okay. Her grandmother was a former slave. She attended boarding school in Raleigh, North Carolina, and then attended Shaw University. I have friends who live in Raleigh right now and who also attended Shaw. She majored in sociology, and she was the class valedictorian. So that tells me she was very smart. And after graduation, she moved to New York City, which is very typical of people at that time because they wanted to move for greater opportunities. I joined the Young Negro Cooperative League in 1930. I quickly rose to become the national director, again, emphasizing her abilities. In 1935, I co-authored the Bronx Slave Movement, an expose of the frightful condition confronting the African American domestic workers in New York City. During this time, I got married, but I kept my maiden name, and I also kept my marriage a secret. But again, knowing the history of women and employment, you know that it was important that your boss not know that you were married, because many times you lost your job if you got married. Many school teachers never let their bosses know that they were married for that very same reason. Okay. In 1943, I began an association with the NAACP, which is a national advancement for colored people. I rose to the highest position that a woman ever attained. I was a director of branches. I traveled mostly throughout the South, helping with recruiting and fundraising. In 1946, I became the New York branch president. In 1943, I ran for New York City Council, but lost. I joined a group in 1956 that channeled donations from affluent patrons to civil rights initiatives. The rest of my career involved serving as interim director of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. I helped with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee that was called SNCC. And this group offered freedom rides to students of the segregated South. Some of you may remember bus loads of students from different colleges went to the South to help in the civil rights movement. And she helped to organize that. She served on the staff of the Southern Conference Education Fund from 1962 to 1967. And she also participated in the formation and coordination of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. Before that time, only Caucasian men could be a delegate at the Democratic Convention. So she worked to allow minorities and women an opportunity to sit as a delegate. So women, we can thank a lot of women in the past for that accomplishment. My personal life was so hidden behind my zest for my professional pursuits that many co-workers never knew I was married. I remained active in social rights and justice until my death in New York City in 1986. I am Ella Baker.
Good job. And what I'm hoping is that we have some discussion. Does anybody have a comment or a question?
She never had any children then, right?
No. I couldn't find anything to lead me to think that she did. I think she was so
too
wrapped up
busy.
in her career in advancing the civil rights movement and that.
And also because her marriage was so secret, had she had children, I think it would expose that.
You know, actually, when I started to work at Wellspring 30 years ago, there were two older ladies that worked here. One was in her 70s and one was in her 80s. And the lady in her 80s told me when she got married, she and her husband married in secret and lived separately during the week because she had a job at the bank. And it was the first time I realized that in that era, women would lose their jobs if they were married.
Oh, yeah.
And so I find this interesting. And so Ella had to do the same thing.
And so far as the fact that she worked to get women and minorities the right to sit at the Democratic Party, I think it was Sojourner Truth. I don't know if we're doing her today, but she actually went before Congress because women, period, no matter what race you were, had very few rights. And she worked for the right. So she did this also.
And Ann, I don't know if you know this or the rest of you, but Martha Thomas's sister was the director of our local chapter of the NAACP.
Yes.
Liz Dominez,
Yes.
Elizabeth Dominez.
I didn't know they were sisters until after she died.
Is that right? Yeah. And one of the things that Martha told me early on is that we've had a misconception of what the NAACP is. And she said the words colored people means people of every color. That's right. So the NAACP is for all people, not just black people. So I found that very, very interesting. All right, Mary Waxton, are you all set?
Yep.
Okay.
My name is Shirley Chisholm.
Chisholm.
Excuse me. My name is Shirley Chisholm. I was born on November the 30th, 1924, on Shirley Street, Hill. I was born in Brooklyn. My parents were from Barbados. I spent part of my childhood in Barbados, and my grandmother, because my parents had 8 children, and times were very hard during the Depression. I returned to Brooklyn when I was 10 and attended mostly white public schools. I lived at home and attended Brooklyn College. I began my career as a teacher and earned a master's degree in elementary education from Columbia University. I was married to Conrad Chisholm from 1947 to 1977, and I read Arthur Hardwick Jr. in 1986. I became politically active in the Democratic Party after I graduated from Brooklyn College in 1948. I married Conrad Chisholm in 1949. After a successful career as a teacher, I ran for and won the seat in New York State Assembly. The civil rights movement was full swing. I served in the State Assembly until 1968. Here are some of the successful bills I supported to provide assistance to low-income students to go on to higher education, to provide employment insurance, to cover personal and domestic employees, and to reserve law that caused female teachers in New York to lose their tenure, which means length of time, while they were on maternity leave. I became a member of the United States House of Representatives and served from 1969 through 1982. I was against so much money being spent on the defense budget during the Vietnam War, where many Americans were hungry, poorly educated, and without adequate housing. I was also a stunt, which means steadfast and strong support of women's rights. I ran for the office of President of the United States in 1972, but did not win the nomination. I taught politics and women's studies at Mount Holyoke College from 1938 to 1987. I was so I was a sole founder of the National Political Congress of Black Women in 1984.
Good job. Before Roy starts, I want to ask you, do you all remember Shirley Chisholm? If I could pick a word that I think describes Shirley Chisholm, it would be spunky.
I would say dynamic.
Yes.
She had.
When I think that a female, let alone a black female, tried to run for the office of president clear back in 1972,
That's right.
think about the confidence and the ability to overcome criticism and nasty things, and the chutzpah that you'd have to have. So I think she was a force to be reckoned with. Just a little tiny lady. But you know the saying, small but mighty. Yeah. Anybody else have anything to say about Shirley Chisholm, or a question or something you didn't think you heard or did hear?
Well, this is something I did not know. I know that she said that she married the Chisholm one day, but then years later she married Hardwick. And I guess I didn't know that because she kept it. People knew her as Chisholm, so I guess
Yes.
she kept that name.
Yes, that was surprising to me too. Yeah. You know, the people,
She married him in
the
49.
people that are
She
being
married
read
him in
about today,
86.
what you'll see is that they tried hard to further their own education by one means or another. So they knew the road to achieving what they needed to achieve was through education, self-taught or formal. All right, Mr. Roy Hostler.
Can you hear me? I'm gonna read about Lewis Howard Latimer today. But I enjoy working on these kind of projects because it helps me learn. And part of that process is I like to see photographs of the people that I'm learning about. So we put those on the board over there for you to be able to absorb, putting a name with a face. And I'm going to read about Lewis Howard Latimer, who's in the lower left-hand corner. So I'd like for you to take a look at his image and what he looked like as a young man, and really take some time to absorb his impressive achievements. His name is Lewis Howard Latimer, and I was the youngest of 4 children of Rebecca Latimer and George Latimer. I was born way back in 1848, and my parents were both slaves in Virginia who ran away to freedom in Boston, Massachusetts in 1842. When the slave owner, James Gray, came to Boston to take my parents back to Virginia, it became a noted case for the abolition of slavery. William Lloyd Garrison became involved, and $400 was raised to buy the freedom of my parents. After serving in the U.S. Navy, I gained employment as an office boy with a patent law firm. I learned how to use a set square, ruler, and other tools. By 1872, I was appointed to the position of head draftsman. I married Mary Lewis in 1873 and had 2 daughters. In 1874, I co-patented an improved toilet seat system for railroad cars called the water closet for railroad cars. Later, I was employed by Alexander Graham Bell in 1876 and was asked to draft the necessary drawings required to receive a patent for Bell's telephone. In 1879, I moved to Bridgeport, Connecticut. I was hired as an assistant manager and draftsman for the U.S. Electric Lighting Company, a company owned by Hiram Maxim, who was a rival of Thomas Edison. In 1861, Joseph Nichols and I invented a light bulb with a carbon filament, an improvement on Thomas Edison's original paper filament, which would burn out quickly. I sold the patent to the U.S. Electric Lighting Company, owned by Hiram Maxim, a rival of Thomas Edison. I was hired by the Edison Light Company in New York City in 1884 as a draftsman and an expert witness in patent litigation on electric lights. While at Edison, I wrote the first book on electric lighting, incandescent electric lighting, in 1890. I also supervised the installation of public electric lights throughout New York, Philadelphia, Montreal, and London. In 1892, the Edison Electric was combined with the Thomas Houston Electric Company to form General Electric. I continued to work in the legal department, and in 1911, I became a patent consultant to law firms. So Lewis Howard Latimer's contributions were many, especially with electric lighting and the telephone. And what he really did with lighting was that while Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, what he did, Lewis did, was improve on that filament for the electric light to really make it commercially viable and useful, so it would last a longer time so we could use it today. So his contributions to our, we're living in a world that he helped make better.
I like your extras, Roy. And it strikes me, and I think this has happened across the board, a lot of times people that are co-responsible for inventions or improve on them for whatever reason don't get credit.
That's true.
And it's true throughout history. And this shows how Thomas Edison was out front and well-known and involved with what was to become General Electric, so he's gotten his name out there, and his name out there in history. So it's good to find out a backstory.
It's the same thing happened when, I think, Admiral Perry gets credit for reaching the North Pole first. But, and I just lost his name, it must be age. His companion who went with him was a black man, and he'd go so far ahead and forage, and then Perry would come, and then he'd say, "Pardon? What's it? You probably know it because there's a book about him in the library." But anyhow, he actually got there first.
Okay.
But because Perry was like the main person,
Yeah.
then he came on and he got credit for it. I'm sorry.
Is that Shackleton?
No, it's not Shackleton. And I'll know if you say it, because I was just thinking that when you read that.
Last year when we did the Women's History Day, I believe somebody did Sacagawea,
Yes.
who was a Native American woman, and she actually did a lot of the plowing through the woods and all that to make way for Lewis and Clark. So yes,
Yeah.
many people do the grunt work, but
Right.
somebody very well known, yes. All right, Jerry Armstrong.
I'm retired from the U.S. Air Force myself after 33 years, so I'm very, very honored to be able to tell you about Jesse Leroy Brown. My name is Jesse Leroy Brown. My life spanned from 1926 to 1950. I was a United States Navy officer. I was the first African-American aviator in the U.S. Navy, a recipient of the Distinguished Flying Cross, and the first African-American naval officer killed in the Korean War. I was born in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I was one of 6 children. My mother was a school teacher and my father was a grocery warehouse worker. We lived in a house without indoor plumbing or central heating. In 1938, we moved to Lux, Mississippi, where we were sharecroppers. In high school, I played basketball, football, and ran track and field. In 1937, I wrote a letter to the U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt and expressed my concern that African-American pilots were being kept out of the U.S. Army Corps. which is the Air Force today. Okay, I worked several part-time jobs in order to pay for my education in the Ohio State University. While there, I tried several times to apply to the school's aviation program, but I was denied because of my race. I majored in architectural, thank you, yeah, engineering. During my second year of college, I enlisted in the U.S. Navy Reserve Officer Training Corps. With the stipend? Okay, thank you. With the stipend I received, I was able to complete my degree in 1947. Since naval cadet were not allowed to marry, I married my wife in secret, and we only saw each other on weekends. In 1948, I acquired the Navy Aviation Badge and became known nationally. I broke the color barrier, which had been long-standing in preventing blacks in Navy aviation. I was commissioned as an ensign in 1949. After this time, I was able to reveal that I was married. My ship, the Lighty, was deployed as part of a campaign by President Harry Truman to support the South Korean troops from the invasion of North Korean armies. I flew dozens of missions during that conflict. On December 4th, 1950, during the same conflict, my plane was hit by a small arms fire from the Chinese infantry. I tried to land my plane safely, but it broke up violently, and it was destroyed. I want to say this about Jesse Leroy Brown too. Flying in the Navy, he would have to fly sometime off of ships, and when you do that, it's something that a lot of Air Force people can't do because you have that small little space you have to land on. That takes a very, very special type of pilot. So he just really wasn't an airplane pilot. He actually had the capabilities of taking off from carriers too, which is something a lot of Air Force people can achieve. So
That's excellent. That's, and when I see that, when I see a plane landing on a carrier, I'm like,
Right.
because I'm in such a small space and the skill that would take.
actually, when they land, they're actually taking off at the same time.
Yeah.
Because
okay.
when they come down, they have to actually gun the plane when they land. And if a cable doesn't catch, they have to be able to clear the deck when they leave the other side of the plane.
Oh my land, I can't even imagine.
Otherwise, they'll go into the ocean.
Yeah, they'll go into the ocean. So, and also it's such a G-force doing that the pilots are only allowed to fly 6 months a year in the Navy because it's too hard on their body.
Okay, okay, very interesting.
Was he killed in that, when that plane went down? He was killed then?
Yes,
Yes.
he was actually killed in 1950 on December 4th.
That was the Korean War conflict.
Yeah.
My husband was in that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You know, they say that Vietnam is that there's not a whole lot talked about, but even less about the Korean War. I mean, I know very little about it. So,